there, I'm Nandi and welcome to another show of Talk to Me. Today we're going to be talking about the subject we all dread and hate and just don't even want to hear it, and you have people calling you and saying, yeah, where's my money? We're talking about debt today, and we've been very fortunate enough to get a professional who works in the credit industry and who can give us the outlook from the other side, from the debt collector's point of view. Mr. Carl, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Nandi. I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope I can certainly enlighten you on a few facts within the industry.
Oh, that would be awesome. So first of all, you work for Credit Intel, right?
Yes, I'm the CEO of Credit Intel. Mm-hmm. We are a full-service debt collector company.
Okay, so you deal specifically with debt?
Yes.
Okay, and how long have you been there for?
I've been with Credit Intel for probably about 6 years now, and but always been in the credit industry in some other way, specifically first in the credit bureau industry, information, and then eventually as it is now in the debt collection business. Okay,
and you know, I'm sure being in this business, you've seen so much and learned so much and can pass on so much knowledge. What's one of the biggest faults or the biggest mistakes you've seen happen again and again, or maybe every once in a while, that consumers make in terms when it comes to their debt and how to handle it?
You know, Nandi, the big problem is that consumers don't know when to stop. Simply what happens is they overextend themselves, and it's rather sad because the banks and all the lenders specifically try and prevent this.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure you're aware the new National Credit Act came in a few years back, and also the debt collection industry is very well regulated these days. And what has actually happened is there's been certain rules that have been laid down in terms of the actual lending, which means that if you go to a bank and you say to them that you want to lend an X amount, they will certainly do it if you are able to afford it. And the very first priority that they look at is in fact whether you can afford it. I'll give you an example. If you own a property, or you want to buy a property rather, you would have to at least display 30% of your salary. The repayment on that property cannot exceed 30% of that salary that you currently have.
Okay.
And of course, if that is the requirement, then generally people will be able to afford it. But you know, people don't always put the truth on their forms as well in terms of their expenses, so then they find that they get into trouble.
Oh, okay. So it's also part of being honest, you know, with your creditors.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then, what service does your company provide?
Nandi, we are a full-service debt collector. We collect monies on behalf of lenders in all industries throughout the country, as well as international. So from a bank right down to a property owner, we they would come to us and say, can you please collect from XYZ? They haven't paid us, and we would start then a procedure against the debtor that has not paid, which includes various phone calls, letters, SMSs. We use all forms of communication. And may I say that we really try and be nice about it, but of course at the end of the day we are very firm, and the one thing that anyone that owes money must realize, if they've been handed over to us, they're not going to get away with it. And I'm not talking about disputes where there are real scenarios where they have maybe paid but they didn't use the correct like a reference in the bank, etc. I'm talking about a real scenario where someone owes and they haven't paid. So we would go after them, and we would follow a full procedure, which includes in fact 88 steps depending on where it goes, which is upfront. First, all the communication, then we're talking about default listing on the credit bureau. We're actually talking about sending out the sheriff to
Oh, goodness.
Warrant of execution, or this repossession.
Oh goodness, it sounds so scary, you know, just to be, you know, approached by a sheriff and they're like, oh, you need to give these people their money back. But a lot of people, I guess, you know, they don't think it's that serious and they don't think you guys are going to pitch, etc. You know, also, how do we avoid getting into that position? Because as you said, we tend to overspend sometimes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, firstly, I'd just like to say one shouldn't be scared of the sheriff. You should be scared if you don't pay your account. But the sheriff is only doing his job. We're only doing our job. We do it for a fee. It's not an easy job. It's a tough job. But trying to avoid it is very, very simple. It's really just a question of not overextending yourself. And at the end of the day, if you don't overextend yourself, you're not going to have this problem. I mean, I am a firm believer of one, nor a borrower or nor a lender be. You know, if you don't lend, you don't borrow, you cannot get into trouble. But it's not always possible, and certainly when one goes into business, it's actually a very good method to expand your business at certain times if the interest rates are low. And therefore, I would say that as long as you're not overextending yourself, you make sure that you actually do your budget and see, my income is X, my expenses are X, and I've got so much left after paying the bills. But overextension is a major problem in this country, and we really need to address this together as a nation.
It's very, you know, it's a good point that you pointed out. Don't overextend yourself because, you know, it does get you into trouble. But my problem is, I once was approached and I was in trouble. And, you know, the bank was like, you know what, we can borrow you money so you can pay off your debt. And it's like, wait a minute, but I'm already in debt. So I'm paying debt with debt. Why do institutions allow people to still borrow further when they're still in debt? How does that work?
Once again, the prerogative remains on, and the banks differ in their methods of doing it, but there are certain laws in terms of how much you can actually borrow. Okay. And of course, if you go over that line, then it is a pure question of you didn't declare it to the bank maybe, and then you're going to find yourself in trouble at the end of the day. It's a simple fact of the matter. At the end of the day, if your salary is 10,000 Rand a month, you can't have 11,000 Rand in bills. You're going to come short. And then you go and borrow more to try and pay off what you've already gone in debt with, and it goes into a vicious circle, and you obviously won't survive in that fashion.